All right. All right, welcome back. Unlocking the secrets of wholesale real estate success. Let's talk a little bit more. Any game you're going to do successfully in life, you need to set goals, right? You need to set goals. And and not just some random goals. I think most people set goals that they forget. Most people set goals that they forget, but you want to be able to set what we call a SMART goal, and it's an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Okay. So we're talking about wholesale real estate, the art and science of finding deeply discounted properties, locking them up under contract, assigning the contract over to an end buyer investor in exchange for an assignment fee of $10,000 or more. I've My first deal was $10,000. I averaged, by the time I was doing the 31st deal, I averaged about $15 to $25,000 per deal. My highest deal paid me about $82,000 per deal. Net profit, no properties to manage, no landlords, no tenants to babysit. Okay, so that's the game that I'm sharing with you here right now. All right. So now, with that being said, let's talk about the secret. The secret. I just give you one of the secret real quick. Specific and measurable, smart goals. Specific and measurable. This is not one of those things where you're just throwing mud at the wall and hoping something will stick. That's the fastest way to fail, not just in this business, but in any other business. Okay? Not just in this business, but in any other business. All right. So, in order to make it specific, measurable, we need to know what metrics to track. Okay. I want to give you some more specific metrics around the wholesale real estate. Honestly, what you really want to pay attention to is there are two. I'm going to give you two of them, two additional ones here that you should pay attention to. It's called the ARV and the MAO. Okay. All right. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second here. All right, so metrics, return on investment. Like any other business, you're going to invest at least time. Okay, like for example, if you're watching this either as a live or replay, you're investing time, right? So no problems there. You already know you have to invest time. Time is worth more than money, by the way. So the idea over time is you want to use more money and less time because you can't get time back. Time is literally your life. So you can get it back. So the more you spend into it, the more you should be interested in some kind of return on investment. And the more you should want to spend time. The idea is to gain your life back, gain some money, right? So you can reinvest money and then have time to spend with your family and friends. So you would notice here that I'm always looking at leverage. How can we get better results with less resources? Leverage. How can we get more with less, right? So that we can actually invest more and then get more, right? That's the idea. So return on investment is one of the first things you should always pay attention to when it comes to this, the ROI. Then there's something called margin per deal. How much margin are you going to make per deal? So when I start talking about the ARV and the MAO, the whole idea is what's the margin? How much spread can we get out of this deal? And because that's how you're going to create market. Remember, you're not a retail seller, right? You're not selling to a consumer, you're selling to an investor, a business owner who actually still wants to make profit. So they actually have multiple people you have these people in the game to actually put money in your pocket by simply following their formula, right? Then there's also something called speed to close. So if you list a retail property on the market, right, you do care about time to close, but you have 90 days, 45 days to 90 days, you have more time. But when it comes to wholesale, you're not if you're a wholesaler, you're not buying a house, you're creating the opportunity for an investor to buy the house. So you need to know your numbers so that the property can go straight from contract to close as soon as possible. Okay. So there are some investors, they care about what they call the cap rate. Okay, so invest a certain money of they invest a certain amount of money, but then they expect a certain amount of income coming in per year. Okay, and that the number that they use for that is called the capitalization rate. Okay, basically a measure of the potential rate of return on the property. Okay, they're looking for what they call the net operating income. For a lot of time, you're going to be dealing with rental properties, right? Income properties, income generating properties, right? Or not commercial properties, but income generating properties, but still residents, right? Residential properties, right? So you want to know what the net operating income of that property is in any given year, and then they want to kind of match that against how much they actually put down to get that property. So the net operating income of the property versus the property value. So the property value is a moving target, right? Hopefully, is going to continue to increase in value over time. Does that make sense? Hopefully, it's going to continue to increase in value over time. So, but also you want the net operating income to be increasing. So the cap rate is calculated with those two numbers, but we don't worry too much about that. I just want you to be aware that your investors they're interested in the cap rate of a piece of property. Okay, so a higher cap rate suggests a greater return, potential return, and also it still means higher risk. But again, net operating income, if that money is increasing, that's the greater return, right? So I just want you to pay attention to that real quick. Then also there's something called the cash on cash return. So people that are using other people's money, the bank's money to buy a property, they're calculating what they call the cash on cash return, right? The cash on cash, like how much money of your personal money as an investor is in the piece of property. Now the bank is going to lend some money, but how much came out of pocket? How much out of pocket is going into this property as compared to the equity that they have in the piece of property? Okay, so there's some numbers like that. As time goes on, I will break them down a little bit more. But I want you to know that this is not just some fly by night. Everybody's just going to get rich. There's some numbers, and your investors are going to be looking out. They're going to be using some quick calculators to calculate this kind of things, right? But also you can use, like I've always told you, you can use PropStream kind of help you out with a lot of that information. So mortgage and debt opportunities, all those kind of stuff, you will see all those things are already calculated for you. So for example, if you go under comparables, you can see that a lot, this comparable, you can see the properties here, but if you go to the top, you can see estimated value. So the more you use the tool, the more you realize that a lot of things are already done for you and you don't have to stress your brain. Okay, so you can find that the calculates a lot of calculators that makes life easier, plus the explanation of how it works inside of PropStream. Does that make sense? I hope so. All right. Common pitfalls: overpaying. Well, that's major. You don't want to overpay. Well, as a wholesaler, you're probably not going to overpay, but if you put a house under contract and you don't complete the process, meaning you don't find a buyer to actually complete it, if you do that enough time, it's a small community of people doing this well. Your reputation is going to be in the mud soon enough. So poor contract, don't draw up. You need to know your numbers before you draw up contracts. Okay, but you need to be okay with making a few mistakes too. The more mistakes you make, probably if you're doing this diligently, the better you become. So I don't want you to shy away from actually giving it a shot or trying it, right? So what is ARV? What is MAO? We're going to break that down a little bit more as time goes on, but ARV stands for after repair value. Okay, basically is an estimation of the present market value of the property, assuming it's completely fixed up. A lot of the houses you're going to be attracting with the "we buy houses" message are going to be ugly houses, and that's beautiful because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for opportunities to add value to those properties, right? So, but we calculate the ARV from, we calculate the maximum allowable offer, the number you're going to put on a contract. We calculate that from the ARV. And what we're looking for ideally is ARV multiplied by 70%. Okay. ARV multiplied by 70%, right? You multiply. So if the ARV was $500,000, 70% of every $100,000 is 70 times 5. It's $350,000. That's not all, but how much is the estimated cost of repair? Estimated cost, because most of these houses will need work. Okay. And once you do that math, equals to maximum allowable offer. So will they just automatically accept your offer? Maybe, maybe not. It's a negotiation thing, right? Maybe, maybe not. So the whole point of me sharing this with you is that, hey, the secret here is know your numbers. Okay. Know your numbers. How do you know your numbers? You practice. Start practicing. All right. So do me a favor, please hit like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications. As we move on, please check out some other content that we have on the platform and help me share as we'll continue to rebuild the platform at Empire Pro again with all of this free content. Everything is free. Our time is priceless. I'll be right back.